Greetings, cinema and AI lovers. Welcome to the new episode of Artifinema Cinetelligence, which is a podcast series we review retro and underrated sci-fi movies, whose subject is AI and AR. Hope your week was fine and you're ready to discover a new movie. We want to inform you that this episode may contain spoilers, so listen on your own risk. Okay, so I want you to just imagine for a second plugging a thick, fiber optic cable directly into the base of your skull.
Oh, man, yeah. Not exactly a pleasant thought.
Right. And you're doing this just to play a virtual reality war game. But the catch is, going in, that if you experience server lag or, if the AI overloads your neural pathways with too much data, you don't just see a game over screen.
No, it's way worse than that.
Exactly. Your brain physically short circuits, and you spend the rest of your natural life in a vegetative coma.
Just a completely terrifying concept.
It really is.
Yeah.
And back in 2001, director Mamoru Oshii asked, what kind of bleak, desperate society would actually willingly play that game? So today, our mission is to take a deep dive into that exact question as we explore his live-action cyberpunk thriller, Avalon.
Yeah, and it's such a fascinating subject to tear apart, honestly.
We're going to unpack its pioneering approach to artificial intelligence, augmented reality, and those cinematographic techniques that were just completely unheard of at the time.
Right. And, Oshii is globally recognized for directing the 1995 anime masterpiece Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, yeah. An absolute classic.
A total classic. So people naturally expect a certain, slick, neon-drenched cyberpunk aesthetic from him. But Avalon subverts every single one of those expectations.
It really does. It's almost shockingly different.
Yeah, and to understand why, I think we really need to spend these first few minutes just looking at the raw data of the production. Because the actual DNA of how this film was made explains that bizarre atmosphere on screen.
Right, because we are talking about a highly unique transnational co-production here.
Exactly. You have this Japanese visionary director, Oshii, working alongside his frequent screenwriter, Kazunori Ito, and of course the legendary composer, Kenji Kawai.
Whose music is just incredible, by the way.
Oh, unmatched.
Yeah.
But instead of shooting in Tokyo or, on a soundstage somewhere, they just packed up and shot the entire film in Poland.
Which fundamentally alters the entire texture of the movie.
Totally.
I mean, they cast entirely Polish actors. You have Małgorzata Formiak in the lead role as Ash, who's this, solitary elite gamer.
Right. She's fantastic in it.
She really is. And then Władysław Kowalski plays the enigmatic game master who oversees all the AI infrastructure.
Yeah.
And Jerzy Gudejko plays Murphy, Ash's former team leader.
And the dialogue is entirely in Polish, too.
Yes. Which is so interesting. Even for Oshii's native Japanese audience, the language was meant to be subtitled. It creates this immediate sense of alienation and displacement.
And that sense of displacement clearly fractured the audience, I think. If we look at the critical reception, it is the very definition of a polarizing cult classic.
Oh, absolutely. Numbers are wild.
Yeah, so according to Rotten Tomatoes, it holds an 83% tomato meter score from critics, which is great, and a 73% popcorn meter score from general audiences.
Which still isn't terrible.
No, it's not. Critics really appreciated the slow, methodical pacing. But to give you a clearer picture of the divide, this indie sci-fi review site we looked at, Indie Sci 451, they cited its IMDb rating as a much more modest 6.5.
Ouch.
Yeah, and they explicitly called it a boring-to-death cyberpunk. So, people either sink into its meditative rhythm or they just hit a brick wall.
And that brick wall basically decimated its financial prospects.
Oh, completely.
The Wikipedia sources highlight this staggering contrast. The film carried an estimated budget of about $8 million.
Which is a lot for that specific context.
Right. In 2001, for an independent sci-fi feature shot in Eastern Europe, that is a substantial amount of money. Yet the global box office returns sit at roughly $449,275.
It was a catastrophic financial failure in its theatrical run, just a complete bomb.
It hurts to even hear those numbers.
It really does. But you have to consider the cinematic landscape of 2001, right? Audiences were totally primed for hyperkinetic action.
Oh, right, like The Matrix.
Exactly. The Matrix changed everything. So Miramax originally picked up the distribution rights for North America, and they just panicked.
They made such a mess of it.
They really did. They actually forced an English voiceover narration into the Western release.
Ugh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, they were trying to spoon-feed the plot to an audience they assumed would just be, too impatient for Oshii's slow visual storytelling.
Which just completely infuriated the purists.
Oh, totally.
I mean, adding a bouncy, explanatory voiceover to a grim, atmospheric Polish-Japanese cyberpunk film, it just completely ruins the intended isolation.
It ruins the whole vibe, which is precisely why its true fan base was built quietly over the years, mostly through people, like passing around bootleg, unedited DVDs imported from Asia.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
That was the only way to see it properly for a long time.
Right. And that $8 million budget didn't go into marketing, and it certainly didn't go into creating a slick, marketable sci-fi universe.
No, it went into creating a very specific, oppressive kind of misery.
Yes.
And that misery is really the engine that drives the entire narrative.
So true.
So let's get into that narrative and specifically how the AI functions within this society. We were basically dropped into this unspecified, near-future Central European city.
Yeah.
And it is dystopian, but not in a fiery, apocalyptic way. It's dystopian through sheer economic stagnation.
Just everything is crumbling and slow.
Exactly. And the youth of this society are escaping this stagnation through an illegal underground virtual reality game called Avalon.
Named rather ominously after the mythical Arthurian island where dead heroes go to rest.
Right. Which is a massive clue about what the game actually represents to its player base.
Oh, for sure. It's not subtle.
Not at all. And the mechanics of the game are genuinely terrifying when you break them down. Like, players use neural interfaces.
They aren't holding controllers or anything.
No, they are physically networking their central nervous systems into a centralized AI architecture.
Right.
Inside the simulation, they fight AI-controlled military enemies and occasionally rival players just to earn experience points.
Because in this depressed economy, those digital points are exchanged for real-world currency.
Exactly. So skilled players, like our protagonist Ash, literally make their living as virtual mercenaries.
But the biological toll is just immense. The film introduces this concept of the lost.
Which is so creepy.
It really is. Basically, if a player's brain cannot handle the processing power of the AI, if they experience a surge of data or some profound trauma within the simulation, their neural pathways essentially burn out. Yeah. The AI acts like this fire hose of raw sensory internet data blasting directly into the visual cortex.
And the resulting short circuit just leaves the player in a permanent vegetative state.
Exactly. They are housed in these sterile physical sanatoriums. They're essentially breathing corpses, while their consciousness is just permanently severed, lost somewhere in the game's servers.
And Ash is acutely aware of this danger.
Oh, yeah. She knows the risks.
Because she used to be part of an elite, legendary party of players called Wizard. But they disbanded after a disastrous mission, left their leader, Murphy, as one of the lost.
Right, he's just stuck in a hospital bed now.
Yeah. So now she operates strictly as a solo player, and she is obsessively hunting for a rumored, deadly, unmapped tier of the AI simulation known as Class Real, or Special A.
And the motivation behind her obsession is just heavily tied to the physical environment Oshii traps her in.
Yes, the setting is crucial.
It really is. And this brings us to the essay, The Hyperreal Labyrinth, which, alongside the Wikipedia production notes, details exactly why Oshii chose to film in Poland.
I found this part so fascinating.
Right. Logistically, it gave him access to the Polish military, who actually allowed the production to use real T-72 tanks and Mi-24 attack helicopters for the in-game combat sequences.
Which is just a brilliant inversion when you think about it.
How so?
Well, he uses real, heavy, physical military hardware to represent the artificial digital world of the game.
Oh, wow. Yes, it is. But aesthetically, Poland offered something Oshii just couldn't find in Japan. He was looking for a decaying, post-industrial landscape.
Right.
The sources describe it as capturing a, quote, classic atmosphere of moribund socialism. The architecture is brutalist, it's heavy, and it's crumbling.
Yeah, there's that great quote from J. Hoberman.
Oh, the critic from The Village Voice.
Yes. He made a really profound observation. He wrote that Avalon may be the first movie that uses contemporary Poland as a special effect.
I love that framing so much.
Me too, because the environment itself is the antagonist.
Yeah.
I mean, if your physical reality is a gray, economically stagnant ruin where you eat flavorless food and ride a decrepit tram, the appeal of the game becomes obvious.
You're desperate for an escape.
Exactly. It's like modern screen addiction, but taken to a lethal neurological extreme. You aren't just playing a game, You are migrating your soul to a place where you actually have agency and wealth and power.
Right.
The physical world in Avalon is constructed to be so fundamentally unappealing that the AI simulation becomes the only rational place to exist.
And Oshii ensures the audience feels that repulsion through his cinematography.
Oh, absolutely.
He doesn't just show you a sad city. He completely manipulates the visual language of the film to alter your psychological state.
He really gets in your head.
He does. And this is where we need to examine the technical execution, specifically his use of the digital intermediate process.
Right. So for you listeners who are deeply interested in the evolution of cinema, let's break this down. The digital intermediate, or DI, was a relatively new frontier back in 2001.
It was basically cutting edge.
Yeah. Before this, you shot on physical film and you cut physical film. Oshii shot Avalon on traditional 35mm film, specifically the Super 35 format. But then he digitized those physical reels into a computer so he could manipulate the color timing of every single frame.
He essentially weaponized the DI process.
He really did.
What he did was meticulously strip away almost all the primary colors from the real-world scenes. He drains the reds, the blues, the greens.
Just sucks the life right out of it.
Exactly. And what is left is this washed-out, high-contrast, tea-stained sepia tone. It looks like a photograph from the 19th century that has just been left in the sun to fade.
It's aggressive. You watch these scenes and you can practically feel the dust in your throat.
The sepia tone physically depresses the viewer.
It does.
And he pairs this color grading with very specific camera movements. Gerard Krauss wrote an extensive essay on the alternative cinema of Avalon, highlighting how Oshii uses camera movement to dictate reality.
This is such a cool technique.
It is. In Ash's real world, Oshii relies heavily on static shots, where the camera doesn't move at all or uses dollies.
Right, and just to clarify for the listeners, a dolly is basically a set of tracks, like small railroad tracks, laid down on the set.
Exactly.
And the camera is mounted to a wheeled cart that glides along these tracks. It creates a perfectly smooth, frictionless movement.
Right.
So Oshii uses these dollies to create a sense of sterile inevitability. Like when Ash is riding the tram or walking her basset hound, the camera just glides alongside her with this mechanical, lifeless precision.
There's absolutely no human energy behind the lens.
None. But then contrast that with what happens the second she plugs her brain into the Avalon AI.
Right, it's night and day.
When we're inside the game, the smooth dollies vanish. Suddenly we get intense, shaky cam.
Yeah, the camera operator is actually holding the rig on their shoulder, running alongside the characters.
It mimics the chaotic, boots-on-the-ground urgency of a combat documentary.
It's a complete psychological reversal.
Totally. Oshii is basically training our brains to associate the slow, smooth, sepia-tone physical world with death and the chaotic, shaky, violent world of the AI with life.
Because the artificial world feels infinitely more visceral to our nervous system.
Yes.
But he never lets you forget that it is an artificial world.
Right, the rendering limits.
Yes. The visual representation of the AI infrastructure is fascinating. Because it's a game, it operates on software, and software has rendering limits.
The way people die in the game is one of the most iconic images of the deep dive we are doing today.
Oh, it's unforgettable.
When a player or an AI enemy is shot with a tank shell or a machine gun, there is no blood.
None at all.
Instead, the physics engine of the game just pauses them. They freeze midair, and then they visually shatter into hundreds of flat, two-dimensional polygonal shards that just dissolve into the air.
It creates a brilliant cognitive dissonance.
It really does.
I mean, you are watching real Polish attack helicopters fire real missiles, but the destruction is rendered as explicitly digital 2D artifacts. It's a constant reminder that the violence, while neurologically fatal to the player sitting in a chair somewhere, is just a mathematical equation being solved by a server.
And the terror really sets in when the mathematics start failing.
The glitches.
The glitches. The WordPress reviews of the film highlight a sequence that is just pure psychological horror.
Oh, I know exactly which one you mean.
Right. Ash logs out of the game. She unplugs her neural interface and returns to her depressing, sepia-toned physical apartment.
Yeah.
And then she goes out for a walk in the city. And suddenly she notices that the people around her, the dogs on the street, are completely frozen.
They're stuck mid-stride. A bird is literally frozen in the sky.
It looks exactly like an AI simulation experiencing massive server lag.
Yeah.
The physical world is glitching.
Which forces a terrifying realization upon Ash and the audience, right?
Totally.
Did she actually wake up? Or is her bleak, sepia-toned real life just another lower resolution layer of the Avalon simulation?
By the way, if you liked and interested so far, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. It's really important for us to continue this series.
That frozen time glitch is really the pivot point of the entire narrative.
It changes everything.
It forces the film out of the realm of standard cyberpunk action and directly into deep philosophical territory. We have to talk about the ghost.
Yes, the ghost is the anomaly that drives the entire third act.
She really is.
Within the lore of the Avalon game, the ghost is a mysterious NPC, a non-player character.
Right.
Visually, it manifests as a silent, sad-eyed young girl who just randomly appears in the war zones. And rumor dictates that she is the only gateway, like the key to accessing the forbidden class real level.
And if we analyze the ghost from a pure AI perspective, what is her actual function?
That's the big question.
The film refuses to give a simple answer. I mean, is she merely a corrupted line of code, like an emergent property of an AI that has just become too complex for its creators to control?
Right, like a bug that became a feature.
Exactly. Or is she a deliberate honeypot engineered by the game master to identify the most obsessive players and lure them into a state of neural overload?
She acts almost like a virus that Ash is willingly trying to catch.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Ash essentially hacks her way into a confrontation with the ghost, and when she finally captures this anomaly, the AI grants her access to Class Real.
And this is where Mamoru Oshii shatters his own movie.
The transition into Class Real is one of the most jarring cinematic shifts of the decade.
Truly.
I need to set this up clearly for you. For nearly 90 minutes, you, the viewer, have been trapped in that oppressive, sepia-toned, washed-out reality.
Your eyes have literally adjusted to the gloom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when Ash loads into Class Real, the sepia instantly evaporates. The screen is flooded with a full, vibrant, blinding color spectrum.
It's almost overwhelming.
It is. She is no longer in a war zone. She is standing on a bustling, sunlit street. In contemporary Warsaw, people are wearing bright clothes. There are cars, advertisements.
And the auditory landscape shifts just as violently.
Oh, the sound design changes completely.
Right, because throughout the sepia world, the sound design is muted, punctuated only by Kenji Kawai's haunting electronics score. But in Class Real, a sweeping classical symphony begins to play. And crucially, it is diegetic music.
Let's unpack the use of diegetic sound here because it's so important. It means the music isn't just an invisible soundtrack laid over the film for our benefit.
Oh, right. It's not just background music.
Exactly. The music exists within the physical space of the scene. As Ash walks down the street, she eventually passes a concert hall where a live orchestra is actually performing that exact symphony.
She can hear it.
Yes. The world of Class Real has tangible acoustics.
And the sheer sensory density of Class Real makes it feel overwhelmingly real. Which brings us directly to the philosophy of Jean Baudrillard.
Ah, yes.
The essay Intro to Philosophy of Film discusses how Avalon is really a cinematic exploration of Baudrillard's simulacrum.
Okay, so Baudrillard argued that society has replaced all reality and meaning with symbols and signs, to the point where the human experience is essentially a simulation of reality.
Right.
The simulacrum isn't just a copy of the real. It becomes truth in its own right.
Exactly. When a simulation becomes so hyper-detailed, so flawlessly rendered that it is indistinguishable from physical reality, the concept of a quote-unquote base reality just loses its value.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Right. And Ash tracks down Murphy, her former team leader, inside Class Real.
Right, the guy who's supposed to be a vegetable.
Yes. Murphy is not in a coma in the real world in his mind. His physical body is brain dead because his entire consciousness has successfully migrated into this specific AI tier.
And he has absolutely no desire to go back.
None.
Ash tries to convince him that none of this is real, that it's just an advanced rendering. And Murphy's response is basically the philosophical thesis of the movie.
It's such a great scene.
He looks at this vibrant, colorful musical world, and he says, reality is nothing but an obsession that takes hold of us.
It's a staggering line.
It really is.
He is acknowledging that Class Real might be software, but because it provides color, sensation, and narrative purpose, it has taken hold of his mind. Therefore, it is reality.
This connects so well to the tension between physical reality and spiritual reality, which is analyzed brilliantly in the essay Welcome to Avalon.
Oh, yes. The eating scenes.
Yes. Oshii goes out of his way to make the physical, biological world seem genuinely revolting.
He really does.
Throughout the film, there are these aggressive, visceral close-ups of characters eating. Like Ash's former teammate, Stunner, is frequently shown ravenously shoveling greasy cabbage and meat into his mouth.
And the sound design in those eating scenes is intentionally sickening.
It's so gross.
You hear every wet smack of the lips, the grinding of the teeth.
And why does Oshii do that? He's reminding us that the human body is just a leaky, demanding meat machine.
It's a burden.
It requires constant fuel. It decays. It is gross.
Yeah.
In contrast, the spiritual reality of the digital avatar is pristine. In the game, they don't hunger. They don't age. They execute perfect tactical maneuvers.
Right.
So the film asks a highly uncomfortable question. If a digital world satisfies your psychological and spiritual needs, while the physical world offers only biological decay and economic misery, which realm actually deserves to be called real? Hey, listener, do you have any other idea or question about this? Please write in comments.
The implications of that are just vast, especially as we look at the current trajectory of Neuralink technologies and immersive VR.
Oh, for sure. It feels less like sci-fi every day.
We are approaching a threshold where abandoning the physical body to live as a digitized consciousness inside an AI server might not just be science fiction, but like a legitimate consumer choice.
Right. And I understand the appeal of class real from Murphy's perspective. I really do. But I want to challenge the assumption that class real is actually the ultimate destination.
Okay, interesting. What do you mean?
Think about the visual reveal. The highest, most advanced, most deadly tier of this AI simulation doesn't look like a sci-fi utopia.
No, it doesn't.
It looks exactly like a normal, boring street in modern-day Poland.
Mm.
So is Oshii suggesting that our current everyday reality is already an AI simulation?
Oh, man, that is the exact paranoia the film wants to instill.
Right.
By making the apex of the AI simulation indistinguishable from the viewer's actual reality, Oshii is playing with the simulation hypothesis long before it became a cliche tech bro talking point.
Exactly.
And that frozen time glitch Ash experienced earlier strongly suggests that the sepia-toned real world was just a lower-level server.
Yeah, the lagging dog.
Exactly. If that's true, then entering Class Real isn't about finding the truth. It's just graduating to a server with a better graphics card and a wider color gamut.
Which makes Murphy a very tragic figure, or maybe a very enlightened one, depending on your view.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He knows it's a cage, but he prefers the cage with the better paint job.
It's an incredibly cynical view of human ascendance. And, as we look at the legacy of Avalon, that cynicism is really what makes it endure.
Definitely.
The VGA gallery sources correctly identify Avalon as a pioneer. I mean, long before films like Ready Player One commodified video game culture, Oshii was treating gaming tropes with deadly seriousness.
He wasn't playing around.
No. Avatars, experience points, NPCs, server lag. He took the mechanics of playing a game and elevated them to high existential art.
He fused the melancholic Arthurian myth of fallen warriors seeking a final resting place with an Eastern European post-Soviet aesthetic.
Which is such a wild combination.
It is, and he used that impossible blend to question whether the human body is basically obsolete.
We also cannot overstate the impact of Kenji Kawai's score in achieving that tone.
Oh, absolutely not. It's vital.
The AV Club review captures it perfectly, noting that Kawai's sweeping choral arrangements give the film the weight of high religious ritual.
That is so true.
The act of plugging the neural cable into your skull isn't depicted as a hobby. It is filmed like a sacred, deeply dangerous sacrament.
Like the AI is the new deity.
And the players are its martyrs.
Wow. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on, drawing from Dan North's essay, Spectacular Attractions.
Okay, let's hear it.
When we imagine the future of artificial intelligence and virtual reality, we almost always default to the hyper-advanced.
Sure, yeah. Flying cars, neon grids, infinite cosmic possibilities.
Exactly. But what if the ultimate AI simulation is exactly what Oshii predicted? A collapsed historical circuit.
A collapsed historical circuit. Explain the mechanics of that fear.
Okay, so what if the machines don't trap us by offering us a glorious future, but by trapping us in a nostalgic loop of the mundane past?
Oh, wow.
Right? An AI that runs a perfect colored simulation of a 20th century city where human consciousness is just endlessly running around, chasing meaningless experience points, completely unaware that our physical bodies turned to dust centuries ago.
It is dark.
We aren't gods in the machine. We are just hamsters on a perfectly rendered digital wheel.
A terrifying yet totally plausible alternative to the neon utopias we've been promised.
Right.
It perfectly encapsulates why Avalon remains just a vital piece of sci-fi cinema.
See you on next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Check out the video description for the letterbox list with all the movies we've covered in this series. See you on next video. Bye-bye.